How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. The phone number here is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, very happy to have you. There is some breaking news I've got to get to. Springfield, Ohio. Yes, that's Springfield. The city hall there is closed after a bomb threat, and now an elementary school has been evacuated due to a bomb threat. Elementary school, this is from my WHIO in Ohio. An elementary school in Springfield has been evacuated. Fulton Elementary School on South Yellow Spring Street was evacuated based on information received from the state fire marshal. Fulton students were evacuated from their building at Springfield High School this morning. Students and staff were safe. However, the district is in the process of a controlled release to safely dismiss students to their parents. Fulton Elementary is less than 2 miles away from Springfield City Hall, where police are investigating a bomb threat earlier in the day. School officials are not saying whether the two are related. So you've got City Hall in Springfield evacuated due to a bomb threat. You've got the elementary school in Springfield, and it's somewhat confusing there because it's. They were evacuated from the elementary building to the high school, waiting for parents to pick them up. So you got a lot happening in Springfield. It is all on the map. And I want to spend a little more time and without the partisanship. There's a great thread I want to recount for you because it is for those of you who haven't been here this week and haven't really understood the problems. Let me do this for you, just so you have a real idea of what's going on. I'm not going to deal with the geese and the ducks in Springfield, Ohio, although I will tell you we've had people call the program who swear they've seen it for themselves, and there's a 911 phone call as well from someone seeing Haitians taking geese, and we've actually had several people, I thought very humorously, call and say they actually are okay with it because the Canadian geese were disgusting, and they're gone now thanks to the Haitians. What we have not seen is any confirmation that pets are being eaten in Springfield, Ohio. People are conflating a woman in Canton, Ohio with that, regardless of the pet issue. And it is funny because someone said something on Facebook, therefore it must be true. And you got to defend the negative. Well, prove to me it's not happening because I read it on Facebook. Regardless of your view on that and the dogmatic insistence that it must be happening because somebody read it somewhere on Facebook. Here's what's actually happening in Springfield, Ohio. There's an account called Political Sock, and it points out that on September 14, 2022, Ron DeSantis sent 50 mostly Venezuelan asylum seekers to Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. 50 people and the residents lost their minds. Martha's Vineyard has a population of 20,000 people. And essentially what happened is way more than that. 20,000 got dropped on Springfield, Ohio. So there's been a surge in population, and it's now 30% of the population of the city, and that 30%, they're not stakeholders. They have no investment in the city, really. They've got jobs there, but they're not taxpayers. They don't own land and property. They're immigrants who have been allowed to stay due to the problems in Haiti, and that's the only reason why. Not only that now, they're taking resources from the city. So the cities have had to increase. For example, one of the local public health service facilities, its budget for interpreters had to go from $40,000 to $480,000 to hire an influx of Creole-speaking interpreters to be able to interpret for the Haitians. The lines at these public service facilities for healthcare for the poor has gone through the roof. The local school system now has thousands of kids, many of whom don't speak English as their native language, and they've had to increase their funding. And guess what happens? Property taxes go up. On top of that, one of the issues we've gotten from a lot of callers in Springfield is the traffic, that a lot of the Haitians, they don't have to take driving. They wait until they're 18. They get their license. They use an interpreter to help with the test, and they don't have any sense of actually how to drive. And so auto insurance rates have gone up disproportionate. Auto insurance rates for everyone have gone up more than inflation. They've been very, very high, but they're going up even higher in the Springfield areas. So the cost of just living in Springfield has gone up because insurance costs have gone up because of all the new wrecks and traffic issues in Springfield, Ohio. On top of that, a number of the Haitians are making really good money. They're making money at a place like McGregor's that makes parts for cars. There is an auto manufacturing facility there that they're working at, and others. Now, why? And this is what complicates the issue for some people. The poor white people who lived in Springfield, Ohio, weren't doing those jobs. New jobs came to Springfield, Ohio, and they needed an influx of workers. And a lot of the people who had lived in Springfield, Ohio, were leaving the area. So in this economic revitalization, they attracted a lot of non-native people, many of whom were immigrants from third world countries who came, and a lot of them were willing to do the work. And they started getting paid more money than a lot of the local poor people, many of whom were white. The result is that landlords realized that they could make more money renting to the Haitians than they could to the native white population that was getting government-subsidized Section 8 housing. So they pulled houses out of the government-controlled Section 8 housing to rent to the Haitians at a higher rate. And so that sparked a homelessness issue. Now, I want to be real clear here. There is nothing wrong with the landlords deciding to do that. If anything, it was good for them. The problem here is not the people. The people are not the bad guys. The Haitians coming in because there were jobs. They were allowed to be here. They were legal residents. They flooded the city in search of good jobs, and they got the good jobs. That's not the problem. Good for them. They're going and they're working. The problem is the massive influx over the course of 2 to 3 years. 30% population growth, all non-citizens with no stake in the local community. They're there just for the jobs. And the local population that's been there for a very long time starts getting displaced from their houses. It's a complicated situation because I think you would agree with me. Take the Haitians out of the situation. Take them out of the situation. It's going to be hard for some of you now because they've entered the conversation, but take them out of the situation. A landlord has a house that's getting government-subsidized rent. There's an influx of new jobs in a community. People are making more money, and the landlord decides, you know what, I can make more money on my property by renting to the people who are coming for work as opposed to the people who are poor and getting government-subsidized housing, and that's what I'm going to do. God bless them. There's nothing wrong with that. The landlords aren't the bad guys for deciding, you know what, I can make more money on my house after a couple of years where the government wasn't even allowing me to take rent from people because of COVID. People weren't paying me rent, and I couldn't evict them. I'm behind on my mortgage payments. I'm going to now get out of the Section 8 housing, and I'm going to go rent to the people who are coming in and making more money. They just happen to be Haitians. The Haitians aren't the bad guys. The landlords aren't the bad guys. The bad guys are the Biden administration that didn't think about this stuff, didn't plan for this stuff, didn't care about this stuff, And it's the logical fallout of a massive influx of an immigrant population who gets word of jobs. They want the jobs. They're allowed to be here. They go get the jobs, and they overwhelm the city. And the city wasn't prepared for them. Part of the problem here, too, is that the American media that would otherwise cover these sorts of things only wants to cover these sorts of things as Trump supporters are racist. They don't want to actually cover what actually happened. We've seen these patterns, by the way, in the past. Massive influx of immigrants changing the character of areas very rapidly. It builds local resentment. The locals are the taxpayers, the citizens, the people who vote. They vote into office. These local officials and the local officials, they got to deal with this massive flux of population, and they're trying to balance the needs of the city. They need the workers. They've invested all this money in a revitalization program, and guess what? It worked, but it worked in a way they didn't perceive. They worked in a way of attracting a bunch of immigrants into the community to get jobs. They were expecting all these jobs would go to the locals. The bottom line is this. It is natural that the local population that's been there multiple generations has resented a massive influx of people who are changing the character of the city. And it is logical that a lot of people would resent the fact that the new guys are coming in, they're foreigners, they're there for work, they're not really there committed to the character of the city, and it's fundamentally changing the character of the city because you've now got a 30% surge in population of people who do not what it means to be Ohioan, doesn't know what it means to root for the local teams, doesn't know what it means to have the civic pride that the people who are there already have. Of course, it's natural that that happened. It's not racism. It's easily foreseeable that this would happen. It doesn't matter whether there were a bunch of Czechoslovakians who poured in 30% of the population boost, and now you got 30% of the population is drinking beer and speaking Czech and eating pretzels for lunch. That would be good, though, beer and pretzels for lunch. Nonetheless, I digress. You know what I mean, though. Fundamentally change the character of the city. And that's what has happened with this Biden surge in immigrant populations. And the only way the media can cover it is Trump is bad and these are racist people, as opposed to this is a very complicated situation. The Haitians really did nothing wrong by showing up, but they're not actually integrating into the city because the left has prioritized non-assimilation of immigrant populations. So these people who have been there for decades and multiple generations are feeling like the entire character of their city has changed largely overnight. Their social services are overwhelmed. Their city education is overwhelmed. Their police are overwhelmed. Their auto insurance rates are going up because the people don't know how to drive, and they're being vilified by the American press as the bad guys, as opposed to the non-Americans who've come in and swooped in and taken the jobs and the houses. Of course, the resentment is natural. And shame on the American media for trying to cover this through your standard political narrative, Trump is bad and his racist and his supporters are racist narrative. That's not really it. It is a really complex situation. It's also the fallout of the border. And I think Donald Trump would be very smart to go to Springfield, Ohio, with or without J.D. Vance. Go to Springfield, Ohio, and just say, we're not saying these hardworking Haitians are bad guys. What we're saying is that the Biden-Harris administration flooded this city with an immigrant population that the city cannot handle. When Ron DeSantis sent 50 Venezuelans to Martha's Vineyard, everybody on the left freaked out. And yet they're expecting Springfield, Ohio, because they're not a bastion of progressivism, to suck it up and figure it out, or else they're going to be labeled racist. And that's not good or fair. That's all you got to point out. But I won't hold my breath. AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry. Everybody's talking about it. Billions of dollars invested, so buckle up. The problem is AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI, OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less like Uber, 8x8, Databricks, Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/Erickson, ERICKSON. That's oracle.com/Erickson. Oracle.com/Erickson. Go check them out today. Greetings, conversationalists. I am delighted to have you with me. I would like to go to Gary, who's calling from Springfield, Ohio, no less. Welcome, Gary. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Eric?
Great. What's going on?
Well, I just wanted to comment on your monologue about the Haitians coming in and taking high-paying jobs. One of the things that's been discussed multiple times at the city council meetings is the fact that landlords are kicking tenants out and moving in multiple families into single residence homes. So they'll move in 3 or 4 Haitian families, and it's a single family home not built for multiple families, and then they can charge 3 or 4 times the rent.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and that's been discussed a lot. The other major thing is it's just a cultural issue for many things. We had an apartment complex on Home Road that was blown up by a Haitian lady because she didn't understand that the smell of gas leak, her gas stove was on, and the pilot light was out. They didn't know what that meant.
Oh, wow.
They didn't know what that smell of gas was. So she ended up dying and burnt down several apartment units. Another thing we have problems with is they start businesses, chop shops where they fix the cars that are damaged in residential neighborhoods. All of these are unlicensed, so I'm doubting they're contributing to the tax base or to the city taxes. They do things like shove trash down the storm drains. And I listen to a police scanner. You hear this all on the police scanner. They shove garbage into the storm drains in the neighborhoods, and they cause them to back up. They don't know how to handle trash. Who handles that service? Who do they call? They can't communicate with anyone about it, so they burn their trash. So the fire department is taxed because they're continuously responding to illegal burn calls. I could go on, but
wow.
The main thing is, they're moving, and the city knows. There was a gentleman that talked at every council meeting, and he would identify houses that had multiple families living in a single residence.
Yeah, and Gary, I've got to go to commercial break here. I'm so glad you called in about this as well. I really do thank you for taking the time to call in, because it's such a complicated issue. And part of that is, these people coming in from Haiti who they're not Americans. They don't understand how we do things. They're doing them the way they do it. Like, for example, you're talking about the trash. If you go to Haiti, that's actually a fairly common thing. And it does sound like the city probably needs to start hiring some resource officers to start going and knocking on the doors and saying, welcome to Springfield, Ohio. We'd love to have you here. Here's how we do things, and would love to have you be a great resident and not flush your trash down into the sewer system. It's possible, but it takes time and learning and effort. Good gracious. Now, I got to tell you about Americans for Prosperity that actually has common sense conservative solutions to deal with these sorts of problems. And one of the problems being the border. They've got real common sense conservative solutions to, like, build the wall. How do we handle all the illegal immigrants who've already come here? How do we process those who want to come in? There are ways to do this that, of course, the left wants you to believe are impossible, but they're not. All you got to do is go to americansforprosperity.org/volunteer and sign up. They've got chapters in almost every state. You can be a productive conservative fighting for freedom and free markets and for families, fighting for school choice, fighting for common sense conservative solutions. Just go to americansforprosperity.org/volunteer. Find the chapter in your area. If you don't have one, maybe you can start one. But they'll teach you how to be a great activist, how to go door to door, to explain common sense conservative reform to your neighbors. So much more. All you do is go to americansforprosperity.org/volunteer today. Americans for Prosperity. Greetings, conversationalists. It's Eric Erickson. The phone number is 877-973-7425. I want to take Lewis's phone call right now. Lewis, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, Eric. During the debate, I would have liked to see more pressing of our national security and what their plan would be, especially with the bad debacle that happened in Afghanistan. This is going to be that, if you have an issue, there has been some chatter of a guy trying to warn us of a threat coming into America. We don't know when, but he has been trying to let us know there's a threat, but evidently Mr. Blinken does not want him to testify. I don't know why that is, but, when Bush had to deal with 9/11, you have to go into a different mode, and you have to be in the mode of national security. And I'd like to have known what their plan was, especially us remembering 9/11, is what is their plan of, building our military, and what would you do if we have another, God forbid, 9/11, and especially, she's going to have to rely on, if she does become president, she's going to have to rely on the advice of our major generals, and you just can't ignore stuff if you're commander-in-chief and say, okay, we're not going to, pay that attention. You're going to have to pay it attention.
Yeah, you are. And she's been one of the people who has laughingly dismissed the idea that there are terrorists coming across the border. More than once now, Kamala Harris, when confronted with Donald Trump's claims that perhaps there are bad guys coming across the border, as our generals are concerned about, she's laughingly dismissed it and said, well, there's no real evidence for this sort of stuff. Between the Afghan bungle and all of the other national security issues that Kamala Harris has, it worries me if she's president, which is why I do hope that Trump can turn this around. As an aside, just random aside, there's this conversation going on. I am the guy who apparently sparked it, according to Politico. Told you guys, let the cat out of the bag with you guys, that there are a lot of Republicans having the conversation that it would actually be good if the Republicans take the Senate and Donald Trump loses. I am not in that camp. But there are a lot of Republicans who think it would be good because he would finally burn out. They don't like Trump supporters. They don't like Trump. They think the party's got to get its footing back, and it would be a good thing for him to lose to Kamala Harris. First of all, if he lost, it wouldn't be decisive. It's going to be a close election. Number two, I actually think it would be far worse for the GOP because winning allows you some chance to find a path forward. Losing, everybody just gets at each other's throat. I think it would be destructive to the GOP for him to lose. And I think a lot of people that the GOP needs to win elections would step aside and say, you know what, I'm done. I'm tapping out. It'd be better for him to win. And then you can have the fight in 2028 over the direction of the party, whether you go in Vance's direction or someone else's direction. But one of the big issues is going to be this national security issue that Lewis is raising. And I am convinced, based on the data, that there are people in this country who mean us harm, who came across the border illegally and got away. And it could be a number of Chinese. The amount of military-age single men from China coming across the border is alarming. Many of them are fleeing the country. And I want to be real clear here with everyone that one of the things that's happening is a lot of these people who are fleeing and coming into this country are they're legitimately fleeing. The economy in China is collapsing. The reality is we're probably closer to war with China than we have been in quite a while. Here's why. Xi Jinping has managed to stay in power in large part by fostering a nationalist sentiment, a pro-China nationalist sentiment. One of the things people have a hard time reconciling with China is that China, as a nation, is a group of kind of like the United States, where you've got Californians and Georgians. And we're all Americans, but we're distinct peoples. And Georgians don't particularly care for California. California doesn't care for Georgia. China's very much like that in their territories, their provinces, their regions, their cuisine, their languages. China is an amalgamized group of people who have kind of been forced together, first by an emperor, then by the non-communist leaders. Oh, what's his name? Chiang Kai-shek. And then by the communists. And to get everybody focused on China and patriotism in China, Xi Jinping has often had to foster nationalist sentiment. Well, the economy is collapsing in China badly. China is entering a depression. It's already been in one. It looked like it was coming out of one, and now it's headed back into one. And now the records in China lie. The government there's no private sector check. Like, for example, in this country, the government had to revise its employment down by 1 million people because we have a public sector record and a private sector record, and every year the government is forced to reconcile the public record to the private record. It happened in August. They couldn't put it off till after the election because of the law. They had to do it, and they revealed that the Biden administration's been overcounting employment. 1 million less people working than the Biden administration said. There's nothing like that in China. There's no accountability. If Xi Jinping says tomorrow that China has 100% employment, China has 100% employment. Even as you go to China, there are a lot of unemployed people. The official party line is that it's full employment. The official party line in China is that everything is hunky-dory. The reality in China is that the economy has collapsed and they're in a depression. Prices are declining. They're experiencing deflation. Deflation is very bad. Deflation is more destabilizing than inflation. Rapid inflation can be destabilizing. Rapid inflation, like Donald Trump said in the debate the other night, is a country killer. But deflation is even worse. Let's play this out. And again, I am not an expert at this. I just talk to the experts. But you know what inflation is? Today you're paying $1. Tomorrow you're paying $2. That's inflation. So now let's take a company, sells everything for $1, because I'm done with math. Everything's for $1. Every product you buy, it's let's call it a dollar store. Everything's $1. Everything you buy is $1. Their entire workforce is premised on everything's $1. When they need to hire more people because there's this massive demand for everything being $1, suddenly everything goes up to $2. And that slows down demand. There's been inflation. And now they can hire more people if they need to, but also it's slowed down demand. Not as many people are buying products. They can pay more wages. They can pay higher wages. They can keep the people they've got there longer, more loyal. And now the price of the good collapses to 50 cents. So the good is now priced at 50 cents. They've been paying their workers based on a wage of $1 to $1.50. So now they got to fire all their workers. They can't continue to pay people the wage they were paying now that everything is 50 cents. Sounded good at first, right? Now I can go in and get 50 cents, but here's the problem. Everybody's now losing their jobs because of deflation. And what about the person who lost their job? They got a mortgage. Now they can't pay their mortgage because they're out of work. And guess what? They can't refinance because they're out of work. The interest rate's gone down. They cut interest rates to try to spark inflation, but they can't refinance because they're out of work. And now this has happened to somebody else's business as well. So the people who could have bought for 50 cents, now they can't even buy at 50 cents because they're out of work. That's deflation. It causes depression. Your employees are making money. You're not selling nearly as much. The value of what you're selling is reduced, so you've either got to cut wages dramatically or fire the employees. The employees have mortgages. The employees have loans. The employees have debts. Now they can't pay their debts. So now the bank is collapsing because all the workers' pay is collapsed. This is happening in China, and Xi Jinping has to do something, so he's not to blame because there's only one boss in China, and that's the Communist Party. So what do? You invade Taiwan. And you say it's their fault. They're the ones, and we're going to make them pay. And also, all you young men who are protesting in the streets over your economic conditions, guess what? You're now in the army. You're going to be the ones to go invade them. SEAL Team 6 at their headquarters in Virginia Beach at Dam Neck been training for a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. The preparation has been going on now for over a year. They're practicing what they can do to extract pain from China should they invade Taiwan. The Americans are moving more military resources towards the South China Sea. But they have a problem. Let's go back months ago on this program. You heard it here. You didn't hear it anywhere else. The Russians, with the Wagner Group, launched a coup in Niger. The new Niger government threw the Americans off an American military base, the north end of Niger. It was an outpost to be able to combat Al-Qaeda and ISIS in the Sahel, the region of the Sahara of Western Africa. Turns out the Russian Wagner Group and the Chinese were collaborating together to launch the coup because of the theory that I told you was going to happen, that I told you was their thinking, even though it wasn't reported, and I told you at the time it was speculation on my part, but it was informed speculation. Turns out I was right. They did it to deploy American resources to West Africa to get those American resources out of Europe and Asia. So now the United States is having to get into other countries and move aircraft and commandos into coastal West Africa to combat the rise of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, because ISIS and Al-Qaeda, they threaten the Chinese and the Russians as well, but they're not deeply in those countries. They're in West Africa, and the United States has to combat them because they hate us more than they hate China and Russia. So the Chinese and the Russians very wisely collaborated and planned a series of coups in West Africa to destabilize the region, to force the American military to respond, to take troops out of Asia and Europe. And guess what? It has worked. It's all part of their plan. And it's working exactly as the Chinese and the Russians wanted. Joe Biden got played. And his own arrogance and incompetence made it worse. And now SEAL Team 6 is having to prepare for a Chinese invasion of Taiwan as the Chinese economy collapses, and Xi Jinping has a history of saber-rattling and taking military action when his economy struggles so that he can get the nationalist fervor of the Chinese people away from him and direct it at a different country. The odds grow of an invasion of Taiwan, in large part because of the Biden administration's incompetence. They've been so easily predictable to the Chinese and the Russians. Y'all, we're getting played. We're getting played. Now, I don't want you to get played in your technology. That's where Vision Computers comes in. You can get Vision Computers to build you a computer, and they're going to save you money, and you're going to get a better computer than the one-size-fits-all big box store. See, if you go to the one-size big box store, they got a plan for every contingency with one computer. But you only want to plan for your contingencies. If you call 404-COMPUTE or go to visioncomputers.com, Vision can build you the computer you actually want and need for your situation, for your home, or for your office. If you're a doctor's office, you have something different than a lawyer's office, who has something different from an engineer's office, who has something different from a security firm's office. And Vision can build you the computer for your home or for your office based on your needs and your wants. All you do is call them at 404-COMPUTE or go to visioncomputers.com. And then here's the thing. Their tech support comes free with the computer they built for you. So your employees or you, for each computer, you get a special number to call. Hold time is 15 seconds or less. Have over 4,000 five-star Google reviews. You call and say, hey, I don't know how to do something, or I need to install a program, or what do I need for this, or my email's not working, or my printer's not working, and in 15 seconds or less, you get the answer from Vision. So you do not have to have the in-house IT guy. Let's say you didn't buy your computers from Vision. For just $179 a year per computer, Vision can do the same thing for you. If you bought a computer from Vision, it's for free. If you didn't, it's just $179 a year. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com. If you call them at 404-COMPUTE and you say Eric Erickson sent me, you're going to save even more money. And here's the thing. They do business in all 50 states. So if you're listening to me and you're thinking, well, I'm in Washington State. Vision Computers does business in Washington State, and they can do business with you for your home or your office. Call them at 404-COMPUTE. Greetings. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I would like to say thank you to Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Congresswoman from Georgia. She and I do not always see eye to eye on things. I would like to thank her for calling out Laura Loomer. Laura Loomer and Marjorie Taylor Greene used to be friends. Marjorie Taylor Greene supported her candidacy for Congress, and Loomer lost. And Loomer really went on an extraordinarily racist rant about Kamala Harris on social media, tweeting, if Kamala Harris wins, the White House will smell like curry, and White House speeches will be facilitated via a call center, and the American people will only be able to convey their feedback through a customer satisfaction survey at the end of the call that nobody will understand. And that was in response to Kamala Harris talking about, as a young girl visiting my grandparents in India, my grandfather took me on his morning walks where he would discuss the importance of fighting for equality and fighting corruption. He was a retired civil servant. If your response to her tweeting that about going to India is that the White House will smell like curry, first of all, I love curry. I got to tell you, I make a fantastic curry because I grew up overseas and we had a housekeeper from India, and she would have me in the kitchen with her making her pots of curry. One of the great secrets to make a good curry is you take the spice at the beginning, particularly the cinnamon sticks, and you fry them in the oil, and it infuses their flavor in the oil. You take the cinnamon sticks out, so you're not leaving it in the curry. Use coconut milk. It's good stuff. I have no problem with curry. I love Indian food. Naan is fantastic. Notice I didn't say, for my Indian listeners, notice I did not say naan bread. I just said naan. Why? Because naan is bread. And so why would I say naan bread? Because then I'm saying bread. A line I picked up from the Spider-Man movie. But good for Marjorie Taylor Greene for calling that out, because it is. It is. And unfortunately, I don't understand why Donald Trump is surrounding himself with people like Laura Loomer, Roger Stone, and the rest. They're crazy people. They are crazy people. And they're telling him things that are throwing him off his game, I'm sure. In fact, one of the complaints I'm getting, and these are from senior people on the Trump campaign, are telling me their great frustration is that they can tell Donald Trump something, but then Donald Trump bounces it off of these crazy people he surrounded himself with and say, nah, you're doing fine. You're owning the libs. You're either going to win or own the libs. And if you own the libs, you lose. And you know what happens? The libs then own you because you go to jail. This isn't rocket science, Mr. President. You don't own the libs, you beat them. And you beat them by saying, she's been here 3.5 years. Look at the economy. Look at the border. Look at crime. When we come back, we got to look at the crazy people for just a moment, because the crazy just seems to be the default these days. I would really like it if we had some serious people on our side. Instead, we got nuts.